Born in an age of steam and steel, christened into a world that still believed battleships were the ultimate defenders of the sea. The USS Arizona, hull number BB-39, would come to bear one of the most iconic places in American naval history. She would not be remembered for the battles she won. Her legacy would be engraved in fire, in grief, and in undying memory. Arizona's keel was laid on March 16, 1914, at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. One of two Pennsylvania-class battleships, she was designed for power and permanence, a new titan for a growing American Navy. When she slid into the water on June 19, 1915, she was already one of the largest ships the United States had ever built. At 31,400 tons, standard displacement, nearly 600 feet in length, and powered by 4 steam turbines, fed by 12 boilers, Arizona could surge through the sea, at a remarkable 21 knots, an impressive pace for her size and time. But what truly distinguished her was the power of her guns. 12 14-inch guns, in 4 triple turrets gave her the power to hurl explosive shells over 20 miles. She carried a secondary battery of 5-inch guns, and in later years, anti-aircraft weapons would be added to meet modern threats. Her main belt armor was up to 13.5 inches thick. Her turrets and decks were reinforced to withstand heavy punishment. She was a floating fortress, the pride of the fleet, a manifestation of Alfred Thayer Mahan's doctrine of sea power, an age when battleships were the kings of the ocean. Commissioned on October 17, 1916, the Arizona arrived in time for World War I, but not in time to fight in it. She joined the Atlantic Fleet and prepared for combat, but the war was nearly over. The British blockade had already strangled Germany, and there was little need to risk one of America's most valuable assets. Instead, she trained along the East Coast, drilled her crew, and flew the flag. In 1918, Arizona carried President Woodrow Wilson to Europe for the peace conference following the Great War. She joined the escort for his ship, SS George Washington, a symbol of America's newfound global influence. After the war, she was reassigned to the Pacific Fleet and became a familiar presence along the West Coast. The 1920s and 1930s brought change. Between 1929 and 1931, Arizona underwent extensive modernization. Her old cage masts were replaced with tall tripod masts. New fire control systems were installed. Her anti-aircraft arsenal was upgraded, and her turbines replaced. Though newer battleships like the North Carolina, we have a video about in the description, and South Dakota classes, were still concepts, Arizona still remained a force to be reckoned with, veteran, venerated, and much beloved by her crew. For the men who served aboard, the Arizona was not just a ship, she was a floating city, a mobile home. She carried more than 1,500 sailors and Marines. In her steel corridors, friendships were forged, lives were shaped, and a close-knit community endured the daily rhythm of naval life. There were inspections, drills, liberty in port cities, and long days at sea. She cruised to Panama, Hawaii, and the Pacific coast, participating in massive fleet problems, naval war games meant to prepare for the worst. And by 1940, the worst seemed closer than ever. Relations with Imperial Japan were deteriorating. In a strategic decision, the United States moved the bulk of the Pacific Fleet to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. A show of force and a clear warning. The Arizona arrived in Oahu in May 1940. She would spend the next year patrolling the Hawaiian Islands and training with the fleet. But few truly expected war to erupt. Diplomacy was still on the table, or so they believed. December 6, 1941, Arizona lay quietly in Battleship Row beside Ford Island, moored alongside her sister ships, Nevada, Oklahoma, West Virginia, California, and Tennessee. The harbor was peaceful. Sailors went about their routines. Some were ashore for the weekend. Others were enjoying a Saturday evening aboard ship. No alarms had been raised. No enemy was expected, but destiny was approaching. The morning of December 7th began like any other. The sun rose over the Pacific, casting its light across the still waters of Pearl Harbor. And then, at 7:55 a.m., the illusion of peace shattered. From the sky, wave after wave of Japanese aircraft descended, over 180 planes in the first strike alone. Dive bombers screamed from the clouds. Torpedoes streaked through the harbor. Machine guns raked decks and airfields. The USS Arizona sat in the crosshairs. Her large silhouette and central position made her an obvious target. Bombs fell all around. Sailors raced to their stations. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire. Commands echoed down her passageways, but chaos was taking hold. Then came 8:06 a.m. A single armor-piercing bomb, 1,760 pounds of steel and explosives, dropped from a high-altitude Japanese bomber. It struck near Arizona's second turret, pierced her deck, and detonated a forward magazine. The result was apocalyptic. A fireball tore through her forward section. The blast lifted her hull from the water. Her bow was obliterated. Her bridge and conning tower incinerated. Over 1,000 men were caught below decks. The explosion disintegrated compartments, twisted steel, and ignited fires that engulfed the superstructure. Black smoke coiled into the air. Flames danced across the harbor. Shrapnel rained down on nearby ships and docks. In just moments, Arizona was no longer a ship. She was a shattered wreck. Her survivors, those few who could, jumped overboard or crawled through flames and burning oil to safety. Other sailors from neighboring vessels dove into the burning water, trying to rescue anyone they could. Heroism bloomed amid the horror. But for most of Arizona's crew, there was no escape. And yet, this was not the end of the story. The fires aboard the USS Arizona burned for 2 days. Smoke blackened the sky over Pearl Harbor. Oil slicks had ignited on the water's surface. Debris floated where proud battleships once stood. And beneath it all, beneath the twisted steel and sunken hull, over 1,100 men lay entombed in their ship. The loss of the Arizona was not just a tactical blow, it was an emotional shockwave. Of the 1,512 men aboard that morning, 1,177 perished. Nearly half of all the Americans killed at Pearl Harbor died aboard Arizona. Entire divisions were lost in seconds. Brothers died side by side. Whole generations of families changed forever. The Navy could not save her. Salvage crews worked tirelessly across the harbor, raising and repairing ships wherever possible. The USS Nevada, though beached and damaged, would return to fight again. The West Virginia and California, though heavily hit, would be raised, repaired, and recommissioned. But Arizona was too far gone. Her entire forward hull was destroyed. The explosion had compromised her structure beyond saving. She was declared a total loss, her remains left where they sank, in shallow waters off Ford Island. Her guns were removed. Some of her superstructure was dismantled. But the hull remained, slumbering just below the surface. For years after the attack, Arizona lay in silence. She became part of the harbor itself. Coral began to grow on her decks, fish swam through her open compartments. But even in death, the ship refused to be forgotten. And the men who had served aboard her did not forget. In the years that followed the war, a movement grew, a movement to honor the dead, not just with words, but with stone and steel. In 1950, Admiral Arthur Radford ordered that the American flag be flown from a temporary platform built atop Arizona's wreck. It would fly every day from that point forward, as if the ship were still in commission. Then, in 1962, the USS Arizona Memorial was completed. A stark white structure, suspended above the sunken hull. It does not touch the wreck, nor disturb the graves beneath. It spans 184 feet across her midsection, a silent, floating monument to those who gave everything. Inside, the names of all 1,177 crewmen lost aboard Arizona are etched in marble. Their ranks, their initials, their sacrifice, permanently inscribed for future generations to see. The memorial became a national pilgrimage site. Presidents, veterans, families, and children have stood in solemn silence above the rusting battleship. For many, it is the closest they will ever come to the day America was plunged into war. and the Arizona still lives in her own way. She still leaks oil from her bunkers deep within the wreck, small, shimmering drops that rise slowly to the surface. Visitors call it the Tears of the Arizona, a haunting symbol of grief that has not yet passed. Her legacy reaches beyond Pearl Harbor. 2 of her gun barrels were salvaged and later installed on the USS Nevada and USS Mississippi. Fragments of her superstructure have been preserved in museums. Her bell now hangs at the University of Arizona, rung during special occasions to remember those lost. And her name, Arizona, has never again been used for another battleship. Out of reverence and respect, she stands alone. She is a symbol of sudden tragedy and undying resolve. In the flames of her destruction, a sleeping nation awoke. The attack on Pearl Harbor became the call to arms that brought the United States fully into World War II. President Franklin D. Roosevelt called it a date which will live in infamy, and so it has. Each year, on December 7th, the nation remembers. A moment of silence. The echo of taps. The flutter of flags at half-staff. And the glint of sunlight over still waters. There, in the quiet harbor where Arizona sleeps, the past and present meet. She may be gone, but she is not forgotten. She will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more Ships of War. Until then, goodbye and Godspeed.